Hey everyone, welcome to another Mosaic Teens video online, where this week we are going back to our previous series asking the question, what is? And today we're asking the question, what is, or really, what are the Ten Commandments? So let's get into it. So what are the Ten Commandments? How many of you know them before we get into this video and think that you can list them off? But the reason why I wanted to do this video is that the Ten Commandments, yes, they are given to the people of Israel, but they are also affirmed in the New Testament. And they are something that we as Christians are called to keep as well. And they ultimately point us to a greater meaning, a greater understanding of what it means to follow after God, to follow Christ. And so a little bit of background on the Ten Commandments. They were given to Moses on Mount Sinai. They were written down on tablets twice.
Because once the people of Israel worshipped a false idol while Moses was getting them, so he threw them on the ground in anger and broke them, so he had to go up and get them again.
They're given to Moses by God directly on Mount Sinai, and they are told to be given to the people to know how to serve the Lord. And we see them listed out in Exodus chapter 20 and relisted out in Deuteronomy chapter 5. When Moses was leaving the people, he was reminding them of them and saying, these are what you really need to remember when I'm gone. There's also this sort of preamble or a prologue, this beforehand given before the Ten Commandments, where God is reminding his people of who he is. In Exodus chapter 20 verse 2 it says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And the reason why this is here is God saying, I want you to remember who I am. Everything else that's about to follow, the Ten Commandments that follow, are to remind you who I am. And when you remember who I am, that then you are willing to follow. Right? If we don't know who God is, if we don't believe in God, we don't have a motivation to follow these Ten Commandments. But when we know who he is, we are ready and willing to follow. And so commandment number 1 says, you shall have no other gods before me. This is pretty straightforward, right? This isn't God saying that there are other gods. He's saying that you can't put anything as a priority above me. That we worship God more than anything, and that nothing else even compares to God in our lives, that we love him more than anything else, that we worship him more than anything else, that we seek to know him more than anything else. We shall have no other gods before him. Commandment number 2 says, you shall not make for yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven above or on earth beneath or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third and the fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. And so what this verse is saying is taking the first part a step farther. Not only are we not to have any other gods, any other things ruling in our lives, but we aren't to make any image and worship it. We aren't to make and worship things. Right? We can't worship our cell phones. We can't worship things we made, but also we can't worship nature. We can't say that nature is this thing to be worshipped because it's created by God. And so if nature is beautiful or glorious, it should lead us to worship God and not those things. And this is something that is taken very seriously. There is a punishment promised if we break this, that God will remember this, and he is jealous and he doesn't want us to worship anything else. Quick side note, what does it mean for God to be jealous? We talk about it a lot in this video if you check the iCard. It's ultimately saying that God knows that he is the best thing for us, and he is jealous for us because he loves us, and he doesn't want us going after other things that will cause us pain, cause us harm, and lead us away from him. But he promises also that when we keep his commandments, that he is going to continue to show us his love and his kindness. Commandment number 3, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. So again, this command gives a punishment, that this is serious, that there is punishments for those who take the Lord's name in vain. But what does this mean? A lot of times, this can be misconstrued as to solely saying, OMG. And if we say OMG, then we have broken this. And in all honesty, a lot of times that is true. If we use that, we are using the Lord's name in vain. But it's not just that. What it ultimately means is saying that we use the Lord's name flippantly, that we use it carelessly, that we talk about God as if it doesn't really matter, as if his name is just something to be used in conversation, but that we don't have honor or respect for his name. This can take many forms like the OMG comments and moments, but it also can look like saying, God says it's okay, or I think God's okay with this, when scripture is clear that he's not, that we try to use and put God's name on things that we want to do rather than on what God says to do. But ultimately it comes down to honoring his name, to submitting to him and loving him. And the fourth commandment is to remember the Sabbath day. It says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male or your female servant, or your cattle or your sojourner who stays with you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So we are actually commanded to rest, but the focus of this day, this Sabbath, is not just taking a nap or not doing work. That is part of it, but it is with the intent and with the focus of worshiping the Lord. Right? It says to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. What does it mean for something to be holy? It means set apart, to be specifically set apart for the Lord, that it is a day dedicated to him. This is what we celebrate on Sundays. This is why we go to church and we worship, that we are trying to have a day of the week dedicated to the Lord. And it doesn't have to be Sundays. But what the Lord is saying, that there is a day that we need to set apart, a day every single week for all of our lives where we don't do work, where we rest in the Lord and we trust in him that we will be able to get the rest of our work done throughout the week. So my challenge to you guys is, do you take a Sabbath? Do you rest from schoolwork for a day and use a day to trust in the Lord and rest in him, so that way you have the energy to get all of your work done throughout the week? I know it may seem counterintuitive, like I'm losing time to not do work. And I know you guys are overwhelmed with the amount of schoolwork you have. I understand. But God commands us to take a day of rest, to honor him with it. And when we do that, when we honor him with that, we have more energy than we could without taking a day of rest. We have more energy to get the work done during the week because we have that day of rest. And so the first 4 commandments ultimately revolve around God. They are how we interact with God, how we love God, how we honor and respect the Lord. So a quick recap. The first one is to have no other gods before him. The second is to have no idols, to not worship anything created or natural above God. The third is to not take the name of the Lord in vain. And the fourth is to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, to take a day of rest to honor the Lord. And then the second half, commandments 5 through 10, are all about how we interact with each other, how we interact in humanity. So commandment number 5 says, honor your father and mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God gives you. My parents love to remind me of this verse. My dad always said, one of the 10 commandments has a promise, and it's the one that if you honor your parents, you'll be able to live a longer life. So you should honor your parents. And yes, it's true. But this is a commandment that is given, and it's the first one in this category of relating to humanity for a reason. It's because when we don't know what to do, when we don't know how to interact with those around us, we are to honor our parents. We are to listen to them. We are to follow their instructions so long as they are leading us in the Lord. So long as they are seeking the Lord's wisdom, we are to honor them and follow them. And it's sort of this chain reaction. If our parents are following God and we are following our parents, then we're going to be following God as well. And when we show our parents honor and respect, it is practice. It is symbolically representing how we are to show honor to the Lord as well. that the Lord is worthy of our honor, and he says our parents are worthy of our honor as well, so we are to honor and obey them. Commandment number 6, you shall not murder. Very straightforward. Don't kill anyone. And this might seem obvious to you, but Jesus actually takes this a step farther. In the New Testament, he says, if you hate a brother in your heart, you are guilty of murder. And what this verse ultimately comes down to is loving your neighbor as yourself, to love them enough that even when you're mad at them, you don't take it out on them. You don't kill them. Commandment number 7 says, you shall not commit adultery. This is another one that might seem obvious, but this is for the sake of preserving a marriage and a family. In our sermon series through Malachi, Pastor Jan talked about how the goal of a godly family is godly offspring. A goal of a godly marriage is godly offspring, to honor the Lord in that marriage and to raise up children that love the Lord. Side note, this isn't saying that every marriage needs to have kids. It's saying that every marriage that has kids, the goal is to raise up godly offspring. And that even when you don't have kids, you're raising up godly people. You are loving others and serving them in the Lord. And so the adultery directly undermines the ability of a marriage to honor the Lord and undermines the ability for parents to raise godly children. It's not saying it's impossible to do, it just makes it harder. Commandment number 8, you shall not steal. Again, straightforward. Don't take things that aren't yours. Commandment number 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. In other words, you shouldn't lie. Lying is a sin. We are not to lie, but it specifically says bear false witness against your neighbor, in saying that like you aren't to lie to bring harm to others. Yes, do not lie. That's true. But it's specifically talking about how our lies affect those around us. When we lie, it does impact others and can often cause them harm. Commandment number 10 is you shall not covet. It says you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male servant or his female servant or his ox or his donkey or anything that belongs to your neighbor. You shouldn't be looking at other people and saying, man, I wish I had what they have. Then I'd be happy. The Lord is saying, be content with what you have. The Lord has provided for us already. We should just be grateful and content with all that he has blessed us with and not desiring those things that other people have. And naturally, when we seek after, when we say, man, I wish my life was like them, naturally we harbor anger and hatred for that person. And remember, as Jesus took that command about murder farther, saying if we hate our brother in our heart, this sin of coveting our neighbors oftentimes naturally leads us to hatred. And so these last 6 commandments are all about how we interact with one another. And Jesus was asked in the New Testament, what is the greatest of these commandments? And his response is to love the Lord your God. Right? Summarizing the first 4. Ultimately, the first 4 commandments are about loving the Lord. And then he says, and the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And so the mentality we are to have when we are seeking to obey the 10 commandments is first that we're going to love God and we're going to love others the same way we love ourselves. So I wanted to go through these 10 commandments, not so that way you have to memorize them, even though it's good to do, but so that we can see where the heart of God is in how we are to live. The first priority of our lives is to honor God, but the second is like it. The second is similar. They go hand in hand, that we are to love people and serve others more than ourselves. So my question for you guys this week, which one of these commandments do you think is the hardest for you to follow? Thank you for coming. Have a great week, everybody.